Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Chris Rue and Keith Anderson from Chicago doom metal band These Beasts to the podcast. These Beasts dropped Cares, Wills, Wants back on April 21st via Magnetic Eye Records. If you dig bands like Kylesa, Doom Riders, and Tombs, you will absolutely want to check out this record. The guys talk about their musical upbringing, having to wait to start a band together, being proud of the music they created, and more. This album will absolutely be on my Album of the Year list, and I hope everyone enjoys getting to meet Chris and Keith from These Beasts.
The USB, I plugged it out and I plugged it back in.
That is how technology works, right? You just turn it off and on, and then it's like, did you try unplugging it first?
Exactly. That's all it takes.
Yeah. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Why don't you, each of you, introduce yourself and what you do in the band? Let's start there.
Cool.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm Chris, and I play guitar, and I'm one of the vocalists as well. And yeah.
I'm Keith. I play drums, and I don't sing, but I've known Chris forever, so we should have gotten into a band prior to this, but like latest.
Yeah. Where'd each of you grow up?
I actually grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's like the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and then I lived in Atlanta for like 7 years before moving to Chicago.
Yeah, I grew up in Texas, and I moved to Chicago from Austin, Texas. I've been here for about 22 or 23 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What was start with you, Chris? What was growing up like?
Well, I grew up in a small town. Probably one of the bigger cities close by would be Charlotte, North Carolina. But I sort of grew up in a musical family. My dad played music, so I've just sort of I've been playing music pretty much my whole life. My parents were very encouraging, letting us rock out in the garage, make a bunch of noise. Music sort of has always been there in my life.
Nice. What about you, Keith?
I didn't grow up in a musical family. Actually, I don't want to be a bummer, but my mom bought me a drum set when I was 15 for $250. And my dad kind of yelled at her for doing that, saying you shouldn't spend that much money for a toy. He actually said that. I remember the conversation, but I kept at it. I loved playing the drums, and I kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And sometimes my dad would be stop making that noise, blah, blah, blah. But I think at this point now he realizes that I love it so much. I've been doing it for so long that he was kind of oh shit, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for saying that when you were younger.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, what got you into music?
Actually, early Iron Maiden.
All right.
Really got me into music. I was so impressed with the early Iron Maiden stuff that I remember actually buying, because I play drums, right? I remember buying a songbook for a tablature for guitar for Iron Maiden, because I just wanted everything that Iron Maiden had to do. So I bought everything Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden was kind of the first thing that I really loved. And then it got to the point where maybe at a certain point of time where it really became No Means No and Jesus Lizard. those were the two bands that like really touched me a bunch.
Yeah, I sort of started out with 80s hair metal.
Oof.
Eventually, the 90s came around, and
Yeah.
I got into all kinds of other music as well.
Nice. What were the scenes like, whether that was in Austin or in South Carolina, like when you started getting into music and wanted to play into bands?
Actually, in my hometown, like there was kind of this incredible music scene once I like started playing music in high school. I had a band, that we started in high school and went a couple of years after, did some tours and stuff. But yeah, they were just switcheroo. Yeah. But yeah, there were tons of bands, and just like everybody was just. It really wasn't like competitive. It was more inclusive, and everybody was friends, and it was like everybody was trying to like one up each other, but not in like it was like not in a bad way. It's just like everybody just sort of feeding off each other's like energy and whatnot, and so yeah, I sort of. It's kind of incredible to have such a scene like that in a small town, but yeah, it was like really cool, and still friends with a bunch of those people that were in the music scene still to this day.
For me, like honestly, I'm like a little bit older, but like when I was in Austin for the entirety of the 90s, the band that I played in, we were such good friends with the other sort of like independent sort of like bands that played. Like, South by Southwest is a big thing in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And during the entire time in the 1990s, there would always be this South by So What, which was all the small bands that didn't give a shit about the South by Southwest. They would play at like the little tiny dives, and we did that every year. So I kind of came up from that sort of upbringing in Austin during the 90s with the noise rock stuff, where people they didn't really care about stuff, and the bands that didn't care about stuff, we all got along so well. It was just a great time for Austin at that moment.
Yeah, it was a real like we just love the music, fuck the industry sort of vibe.
Yes, absolutely. It was amazing, and we would make it our own thing.
Yeah, for sure. What led you to Chicago then from Austin?
Well, I grew up in Texas. I was born in a small town, and then I moved to Austin because at the point when you're like 18, like where else am I going to move to in Texas? Austin, like Houston kind of sucks. Dallas kind of sucks. Austin's amazing at that point in time. Now it's a little bloated. But since I lived there for so long, I was like, I just kind of want to get out of this state. I want to move to a different state, have a different experience. So I knew some people that moved from Austin to Chicago. So I was like, I'll try it. So I tried it, and I've been here for maybe 23 years.
Yeah. There sort of was like a sort of exodus out of Austin too around the same time, right?
Yeah, and now it's the opposite, which is kind of crazy. Like it's I haven't been there so long, but I hear my old friends say like, you're not gonna recognize it if you come back.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this guy that we're friends with that lived in Austin, but he's from my hometown. But we didn't actually know each other until I moved to Chicago. Oh, wow. and he's how I met Keith. Yeah,
it's a small world.
Yeah.
Chris, what led you to Chicago?
My girlfriend and I were living in Atlanta, and we just sort of got tired of it. And we had a friend. Yeah, we had a friend that had just moved to Chicago about a year before, and we came up to visit her, and we just sort of fell in love with it and just kind of moved on a whim, didn't have jobs lined up or anything.
Yeah. You were tired of dealing with the 85 in Atlanta.
Yeah. The traffic is something else.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about These Beasts. How'd this band get started?
Well, like we said earlier, Keith and I, we sort of met like almost right away after I moved to Chicago, and so for like, we started talking music, and sort of hit it off with that. A lot of we were into a lot of the same bands and stuff, and then for like 8 years we just kept saying we should start a band, and then finally one day my old band broke up, and I called Keith and I was like, hey, can I move my stuff into your practice space? and he was like, I guess we got to start the band now. It was great though. It was hilarious when I wheeled on. It was in the same practice building, so I just like wheeled all my stuff over to his room, and it was hilarious. I opened the door, and all there was in this giant practice space was a set of drums in the middle of the room.
Yeah, I'll elaborate on that a bit. Like, I've known Chris for so long, and like we would always go out to bars, and we would like see shows. We would have drinks, and I would always say like, man, we should play, blah, blah, blah. But I never made it happen because it's always sort of, what's the right way to put it? It's always uncomfortable for me to play with somebody at first because it just feels awkward, right?
Yeah,
it does. It does. It's like you're trying to dance with somebody and you don't know them, so it's like it's awkward. So like we would go out. We were already friends. We would go out, and I would always say like, "Hey, Chris, we should start a band." Blah blah blah. And then like years later, whenever I would bring that up, Chris would be like, "Oh, you're going to say that again?" I did it all the time. And then finally, when we were in the same sort of building, but Chris had to get out of his unit, just like he's saying, I was like, no, you're not going to have, you're going to have a place to play. So move into my space, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of forced us to actually jam together finally.
Yeah. And then, we started getting going, and then we were like, we should probably find a bass player. And so we started kind of looking around, and then Todd, our bass player, just happened to like move to Chicago right around the same time. And we have a good friend, Greg Shirilla, that introduced us to Todd because they grew up together. And Todd was like, I'm retired from music. No. I finally broke him down.
Yeah.
And that was like 7 years ago now, I think.
Yeah, he was probably like 42 or whatever when he said, I'm retiring from music.
Some people never retire.
Yeah.
You can't quit. Yeah. What are the practice spaces like up there in Chicago if you don't have like a basement or something? What was that building like where you just move from one room to the next? Like,
yeah, it's like, I don't know what it used to be, but some sort of old factory or something that they just like built out. It's like 3 stories.
That's a large unit. Yeah.
Yeah. I would assume there's probably about, I don't know, maybe 200, 250 rooms in there or something like that.
It's 3 floors, right?
Yeah.
It's nice because they have like everything is always clean.
Yeah.
They have you can get like chips or drinks at whatever stand, and like I have had practice spaces before where it's like, oh my God, you walk into the bathroom and it's like you look at the toilet and there's like bugs everywhere.
Yeah.
It's horrible. This place is actually kind of nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Chicago has like that big enough scene to support like a building of just like practice space.
Yeah, there's
a few. Yeah, that are nice.
Yeah. There's quite a few buildings. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's right.
So the music scene here is incredible. It's a lot of really good bands.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Where'd the band name come from?
We were trying to come up with names, and we had like the board going, and we were like, no, not that. And finally, I just sort of like thought it would be funny to sort of name ourselves something sort of arrogant in These Beasts, because like when people are like, describing like musicians or whatever. They're like, oh man, he's a beast, she's a beast, whatever, you know. And I was like, and we're sort of like, don't really think of ourselves as like incredible musicians, you know. And so I just thought it was kind of funny.
Nice.
Yeah, we're super humble people, so the joke on it is kind of a good joke. So
yeah,
and also just the phrase itself, even if it's not applied to like what you're saying, Rue, it just sounds kind of cool anyway.
Yeah.
Like coming up with a band name is so hard.
Yeah.
So These Beasts sounds kind of cool regardless, no matter what you take away from it. Like it's an okay name, is what I'm going to say.
It worked.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
We had some really bad ones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, Todd did.
Yeah.
He's not here, so I can say that.
Yeah. What was the inspiration for you guys musically when you first started playing together? Like, was there a specific sound or idea you were trying to capture?
I think for Keith and I, a lot of like 90s noise rock definitely was, but we didn't never really sort of specifically like said anything other than like, let's do something heavy, you know, at least as far as I recall.
Yeah. I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but as far as what I feel like what happened was just like the three of us, and if we're distinctly like talking about me and Rue, because we started the thing, like a love for playing music and a love for some sort of heavy music. And I didn't have anything at that time, really. I know Rue had some other bands in the past, but like we just sort of got together and it just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it actually just kind of happened.
Yeah.
It's just your influences come out and what you play, and
Yeah.
I think that's what happens with a lot of sort of situations like this, where the band's just sort of it's just like you meet some people and like it happens and like, oh shit, 5 years later, like we're still doing this.
Yeah.
Nice. How'd you guys get connected with Magnetic Eye?
We had recorded our so they put out our last EP as well, and we had recorded that with Sanford Parker, and then I was just sort of sending it out, shopping it to labels, and then they reached out and they wanted to put it out.
Nice.
And they put out this newest one as well.
Nice.
Well, the interesting thing is, I would also like to add is like nobody else sort of like said anything, but Magnetic Eye actually, they said, to not verbatim, but to some degree, they said we weren't looking for anything else to put on our catalog, but this sounded kind of cool, so we're gonna do it, which I felt like was a really good compliment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you guys put out the self-titled EP in 2019, and then the world shut down. How did COVID affect you guys?
As a band, it sort of didn't affect us because everybody talks about their bubble and everything, and we sort of were like, well, we know who everyone's with, like their significant others or whatever, who's in each person's individual, bubble, if you will. And so we were just like, let's get together and keep going, keep writing. And like, we did take, like 2 or 3 months off, to sort of like see where things went and everything and do our part as well. But, once it was sort of clear that it wasn't going anywhere, then we decided to, get back together and just keep going. And, the practice building was like ghost town during that time, like for a good like year and a half. It was like, it's kind of like freeing almost, because like, you hear like, 50 bands at one time, like playing, when you're trying to write and practice. And then we had like just basically the building to ourselves and no noise to like sort of like filter through or anything. So it was kind of nice.
It kind of felt good because in a weird way, it sort of felt good like we're trying to still play music. Like, why are you guys not here at the same time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the building's not tainted. Like, whatever, you can still come up here and practice, but nobody was there. It was really weird.
Yeah. And we were like wearing masks, in the building, even though no one was there. Just like still trying to like, play it safe. But
yeah. And I'm sure that was like a nice cathartic outlet, and when like everything else is fucking shut down, and like at least we can get together and like just rock our asses off for 2 hours or whatever.
Exactly. No, it was definitely like good to get it out.
Ironically, though, it's something that, like, I guess on the sort of press stuff that like they don't want you to talk about the pandemic too much.
No.
Right, Rue?
We have like been told that by a couple of people.
Oh man.
It's like it's a boring subject now.
Oh, man. It sounds too negative or what?
Well, yeah. Well, I feel like it's like, okay, are we far enough behind where we don't have to talk about it? But like, so many bands are still feeling the effects from it, and like impacted like so much, and like the way vinyl
historically, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
I think in music, I don't know. Maybe some people are saying that like it's a dead topic, like don't talk about it or whatever.
Yeah, but it's kind of hard not to, especially when like this was all sort of written during that time, and sort of reflects a lot of that. So
Was there a point in writing where you realized like, okay, it's going to be a while before we get to release this for whatever reason, whether that's manufacturing or just like people aren't ready to release something, that you took some extra time writing?
Not really, no. As far as like the songwriting aspect of it, but definitely like manufacturing really held up the release for like a good year at least, because it's so hard to get vinyl done these days, because everybody has to get that record store day release of Rumors that you can find in the thrift store for $1.
Oh man. Yeah, the record store we went to for record store day, we were like back in the line, and the guy from the store came out before they opened, and he was like, all the copies of Taylor Swift's album are claimed. If that's what you're here for, leave. And like half the line left, and we were like, all right, peace. Like,
wow,
that's hilarious. There's actually this group. I know one of the guys that they started their own record pressing plant here in Chicago probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, and they seem to be doing pretty well. So I mean, it's nice to see that more people are coming into that business.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, there's one here in DC, and I just learned Metallica bought that one.
Oh, is that the one they bought?
Yeah, that's the one Metallica bought. The one here in DC.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, awesome.
As long as they bought it and they keep it going the way it is, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I read about that, and it sounds like they just wanted to like have more say, and like because their product is like that's the plant they've used for years. So I think it seems like they want to keep it going like it is, but we'll see.
It's a struggle. It's a struggle for people to like try to keep this shit going.
Yeah.
Not to sound like whatever, but it really is like, and it's cool to see that like also what's his name that Jack White or whatever, he did his own thing like with starting a printing place or whatever. Like it's cool to see this sort of stuff happen. Like I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have heard of people doing this. So it's kind of cool.
I should probably shout out Smash Plastic pressing plant here in Chicago.
When you guys were writing, were there things you wanted to do differently musically this time around, or just whether it's not writing, but in the recording process? Because this record is so much beefier and heavier sounding than the previous two albums.
Yeah. As far as the beefiness of the recording goes, like that, I think a lot of that really has to do because we recorded it at Electrical Audio, Steve Albini's studio, and so like that really like got a real nice drum sound from the Studio B in the big room, and Sanford recorded this one again, Sanford Parker, and it's just I think it was not that it was like the other studio wasn't nice. It was a great studio, the last studio we recorded in, but it's just
Decade.
Yeah, Decade. Yeah. Like it was a great studio, but at Electrical, like Steve Albini just has everything so dialed in, and like it was really impressive to see. Like he sat down and really thought about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's kind of a hack.
Yeah. Kidding.
Yeah, I'm totally kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but just to like sort of piggyback on what Chris is saying is like I think doing this at this point was like, since we've recorded with Sanford, this is like the third time. Like we recorded the EP with him, but we also recorded the MER Alice in Chains song with Sanford for their compilation. And so this is the third time that we worked with him. And for me, it's like the more you work with somebody, the more you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
The more that it's less stressful, and the more that like you get along with somebody when you're recording with them, especially if they're the engineer. It's like it just makes everything work better, so he can actually know you as a band even more.
Yeah.
And like sort of like put his sort of a little bits of taste on that or whatever, and we all sort of get along with the recording and how it's released.
Yeah. And as far as like the songs themselves go, we're sort of always trying to like outdo ourselves, if you will, like on our previous efforts, and like we end up writing tons of stuff and then just scrapping a lot. So like we really like a lot of that has to do with Keith. We call him QC, quality control. but yeah, I mean, I love that. I love that he does that. Like sort of keeps everything on track, and yeah. So yeah, we sort of just try to pick like what we think is the best out of the whole group of songs that we write.
Album is called Cares, Wills, Wants. Where'd the title come from?
Oh, Chris, can you even just, because Todd, our bass player, he can't be here right now because one of his friends is coming in from Ohio, so he couldn't be here. He came up with the title, but Chris, can you remember what Todd sort of like specifically said about what the title means?
Yeah, it's actually a lyric from a song Trapdoor, the last song on the album, and that song is sort of a like really kind of a, I don't know, for me, like sort of a sad song almost, because it's like really like that one in itself is really all about death and like dealing with that and everything, and basically Todd said like when you're alive, you have all these cares, wills, and wants that you have, but like anything can come along and just take all of that away in a second, and so that's essentially where the title comes from.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Is that like a theme that runs throughout the lyrics of this album, or?
Somewhat. A lot of the stuff I wrote, dealt with sort of like what was going on at the time. So like, death and like confusion and like sort of the world blowing up, all of that happening. Dealing with a wild presidency and all that shit. So it's like, weird time. So like for me, a lot of the stuff I wrote was definitely just reflective on the whole picture.
Yeah. Who did the album artwork for you guys?
That's my partner Ala. Ala Ya. She did our last album artwork as well, the EP, and she's a great artist. Love her work, and the artwork itself. We had a dog pass away during lockdown, and he passed away at home. Luckily, we didn't have to try to figure out like what to do as far as like him being sick and everything. And then the plague mass is, for like, the plague times,
Yeah.
So it's just, and then like on the back, it's like he leaves the mask and just walks off with the footprints. And so,
Yeah. The album's been out about, just over 3 weeks now. What's the response been like?
I've been noticing a good response so far. We had a record release show the same day it came out, April 21st, and had a really good turnout. People bought a bunch of records, merch, stuff like that. I've been seeing pretty positive things online so far, and so it's pretty refreshing.
Nice.
Can I ask you what you think of it?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's fucking phenomenal. It reminds me of like those early Kylesa records and like the Doom Riders record, like
Nice.
Early 2000s like Doom sludgy stuff. That like as soon as I hit play, I was like, yeah, this is
nice,
excellent. So instant fan. So
yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I think I've talked with Chris and Todd like a few times, like, and we've all been in past bands, but for some reason, like, I really think that like this is I'm really proud of this record, to be honest. Like, it's probably like I've recorded a bunch of things like when I lived in Austin and blah blah blah, but like I'm really proud of this record. I think it's pretty good. And I don't generally say that about like stuff I do. Like, so it feels kind of weird, but like I actually think that this is a pretty good effort.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite thing I've ever put out. So yeah.
What's the rest of this year look like for the band? Are you guys going to try to hit the road and tour? Or you just like keeping it local?
Yeah, we've been talking about doing some like smaller touring on the album. We're still trying to figure out logistics and dates and whatnot on some stuff like that. And we've got some local shows coming up. We've got one coming up May 19th with Sanford Parker that recorded us. He's got a new band called Black Cross Hotel, and we're opening up for them at Livewire. And got a couple of dates in July, and one of them is this fest at this brewery called Sound Growler. And I don't remember all of the bands that are playing, but I do remember that Bongzilla is headlining that.
Bongzilla's headlining, but I think for openers, I think it's Slayer and Metallica, maybe. I think Chelsea Wolf's going to do something, similar.
Yeah.
Coming up, I just want to like we do have those shows, but like I just want to write new music. I just want us to come up with some new music. Because we played so many shows in Chicago for the first half of this year, I'm ready to get in there and like come up with some new tunes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Is it tough because you had to wait like a year from record finish to manufacturing and release? It's just like, all right, these songs are old to you now. I mean, is it like because it's just been sitting there? Is it like fresh again, or is it just like, all right, we need new stuff now?
Kind of, but at the same time, it's like if we have a show like we just locally we've been playing a lot of shows, so it's like every month it's like when we get to practice, it's like we get a set list and then we work on that because we want to like work on it to where we are pretty like adept to like knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
And that sort of takes away a little bit of like a practice of like, let's just try to like, get some new music going.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to after these next couple shows so we can like sort of jam around, however you want to put it, and like play some new music and record it and see like what works, and like we could be like, oh, this is going to be a new song now, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.